This is Nina Perez, and this is Straight Talk, No Sugar Added. I am so stoked you're here. You guys know I go around this amazing planet of ours, finding the best humans on the planet to come on here to grow, challenge, and transform your thinking. Now, I found this gem for y'all, okay? So buckle up because today we're going to have a really cool conversation. And we are talking to Nick Hutchison. He's the mastermind behind Book Thinkers. And in just 7 years, he's reached 1 million people each month and hosts the top 2% global podcast, Book Thinkers, life-changing books. You know, we're going to get into books, right? I mean, that's what we're doing. So I am so glad he is here. He's had amazing interviews with like Grant Cardone and Lewis Howes, both guys that I really, really like. They can be polar, right? They're so polar opposites. So that must have been really cool conversations. I'm going to catch that on your podcast. So he's not just about reading books. He's about action. So Nick is here to help you unlock your potential with his new book, Rise of the Reader, which I just purchased. So I cannot wait to get. How are you, Nick? Welcome to Straight Talk.
Nina, your energy is infectious, and I'm going to have to bring you out to the next event that I speak at and have you introduce me because that was electric.
I would love to. I'll do it for you anytime, Nick. The first time we spoke, I just loved you too. I loved your energy. I love what you're about. So here's how I start the show. I always like to know who you are, and so does my audience. So who are you, Nick? Who are you?
Well, you know what's funny? Some people may have heard we're talking about books, and maybe they're not a reader today. And I want to share with everybody that when I was growing up, I was not a reader. In fact, I thought these books were nerdy. They weren't cool. I was more of the athlete, a little bit less of the academic. But going into my senior year of college, I took an internship at a local software company, and my boss at the time introduced me to podcasting. So shows just like this, where a host interviews a series of guests. The guest tells everybody what they did to become successful. And so I had about an hour commute each way to this internship. And I just listened to show after show after show where the successful person gave at least some credit for their success to the books they were reading. So I fell head over heels in love with the personal development space. I love reading books. That's what I'm all about. That's what my book is about. My business is about. My podcast is about. And so it's cool that you're a fellow book nerd. I'm excited to see what we dive into today.
I love it. I just saw a post that you did on IG, and you had like those 500 books or whatever it is all around you. I'm like, I got that book. I got that book. I got that book. It's really cool though. I mean, it's the same with me, right? So I grew up, same thing, didn't really like books, right? But I also was a teen mom. So I had to work 2 jobs, take care of my kids, like the whole thing. And so I never got into books until I got a bit older. And then I went to college in my 30s. So when I went back to college, that's when I started to like consume books. And you're right, though. I mean, you can't give all the credit to books because everything gives you so many different ideas, but it does open up your mind, right? It does make you look at things a little bit differently. Do you have a favorite? Do you have like something that's like switched for you?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, the first book that I read was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Oh, yeah, that was good.
And yeah, that book just, I mean, it completely blew my mind and taught me the importance of financial literacy and that money is a game and learn all about using pre-tax income, all that kind of stuff. But, you know, I've had different books that have continued to surprise me and completely change my life over time. It's just, you know, that was the first one. That's sort of like the OG book for me.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good way to start, right? And Think and Grow Rich is another one that's really powerful too. If you want to get into the more spiritual aspect of it, but I love it. I love it. So talk to me about, what is it that made you go from actually listening to podcasts and then wanting to, dive into books to actually really your business is kind of focused on this now, right? Book Thinkers. So tell me about how that switch happened, right? Because I like books too, but I didn't do that. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, well, I continued to read books after I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I spent that whole summer reading these books. I went back to school for my senior year. And although I ended up taking a full-time job out of school with that same software company, I always had this desire of working in the personal development space. And so what I started to do was share the books I was reading with people on social media. I started to do book reviews, right? Originally, I wanted to release a mobile application that never ended up happening. It sort of crashed and burned, and I spent a bunch of money trying to develop it with some friends. But what I did do was build an audience in anticipation of releasing that app of readers. And so authors started to reach out to me and they'd be like, hey, Nick, your audience on Instagram looks a heck of a lot like my target reader for this book that I just wrote. Can I pay you for a book review? So now I went from reading for free to getting paid to read. And I was taught to always follow
Good.
up with customers and ask, hey, is there anything else I could help with? So I
Right.
started to learn more about the issues that authors were dealing with. And I started to work with them on social media and podcasting and all sorts of things. And that's how my side hustle started to develop.
So tell me about that though. Tell me what it is. What is Book Thinkers? So, break it down for us.
Yeah, it's a digital marketing agency that helps nonfiction authors, like personal development style
Yeah.
authors, promote and market their books. And so
Oh,
we
okay.
three core services. One is short form video production. So we'll fly out to an author with the cameras and the lighting, and it will help them turn
Oh,
a book
nice.
into 50 to 100 pieces of social media content.
Right.
Number two, we do podcast bookings. So we'll place authors on up to 100 podcasts to talk about their book. And then
Whoa.
number three, we do book reviews. So our audience on Instagram is about 150,000 followers, and we do about 1 million impressions a month. And so when we talk about a book, we could sell a bunch of copies. And so
Yeah.
we get paid by authors and publishers and PR companies to do that.
That's cool, right? The way life kind of takes you in this direction. Like I probably if I would have spoken to you in college and had this podcast, you probably would have never imagined that it was going to go in this direction, right?
Oh yeah, I had no clue.
Right.
At first it was just like, wow, these books are interesting. Then it was, well, what if I could build a piece of technology? Then it was, ooh, I just spent a bunch of money and time and that didn't work. Maybe I should give
Right.
up. But oh wait, like here's this one last attempt to save the business, and so I'm very happy that it worked out.
Yeah, that's pretty cool too that somebody saw, the greatness in you, right? That they saw you giving reviews and were like, this guy is great and I want him to review my book. I mean, that is just such a beautiful thing when you do something from an authentic place, right? So you decided you were going to just do book reviews. Yes, you had the angle of I want to do my app, but you also were giving honest reviews. And I think that speaks volumes to those who are listening. I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and leaders, big thought leaders and stuff. And that's the one thing that I have as a trend is the authenticity. It's just coming at it with a place of being real. And that's what I love about the personal development space and the fact that I'm in that as well, just helping women. I just love the fact that we can actually just take our life experiences or things that we're learning and really enrich and impact the life of someone else. Like that's the goal, right? For me, that's the goal, right?
Yeah,
Is that
yeah,
what you
me
feel you're
too.
doing? Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
yeah, go, go,
Well,
go for it. I want to say,
I've
I
heard
want to
it
hear what
said
you have to
this
say.
way. Yeah, I've heard it said this way that your purpose comes from your pain. And so these books
Yeah.
help me overcome a lot of problems, develop skill sets, help me solve a lot of pain. And
Hmm.
so nowadays, I do believe the right book at the right time can change somebody's life, whether
Hmm.
I'm recommending that from my channel because I've read a book and I want to promote it, or we're behind the scenes helping authors promote and market their books as well. The outcome is the same. The right book ends up in
Right.
the right hands at the right time. That person takes action and their life changes. And I just wanted to throw a quote out there because you mentioned Napoleon Hill earlier.
Hmm.
One of my favorite quotes is that action is the real measure of intelligence. That's a
Right.
Napoleon Hill quote.
Yeah,
So
it
it's
is.
only by taking action from the books that we're reading that things
Yeah.
start to happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's why I decided to write my book as well.
Yeah, I was going to actually get into that because I think that is so true is that, you can, read a book and do nothing. You can actually take a course and do nothing. You can do all this stuff and do nothing. What do you think is that switch though? Like, because you didn't just listen to the podcast and do nothing. You actually did something. So, right. So do you think that's innate? Do you think that was in you to actually have action? Or do you think something happened within that transition of getting into personal development that actually flipped the switch for you?
Well, there were a few things around that period in my life. I mean, I was going in my senior year and I had a lot of insecurity around the subject of money because all these kids running around business school talking about how much money they're going to make and all
Right.
these investment terms that I was unfamiliar with. And I wasn't a great academic, like I mentioned. So I didn't have great grades or anything. And so I had a lot of insecurity around money. And as I'm listening to these shows and all these people are talking about huge amounts of money and they're telling me the roadmap is reading books, read these
Mhm,
books.
mhm,
It was something that, I sort of realized I could remove that insecurity by reading about money. And then I went from Rich Dad, Poor Dad to Think and Grow Rich to a bunch of other books about money and mindset and
mhm.
manifestation. And it was like I returned to school for that final year and I was leading discussions about money.
Wow.
And so it was
That's
like in
cool.
the course of a couple of months, I just removed all this insecurity and developed a skill set. I went from shy and insecure to leading these conversations. So it was like, what other areas of my life can I do this for?
Right. Right. Now does your, business actually help authors structure the book as well? Or do you come in like after they've created the book, everything's done, now you're gonna take over?
Yeah, that's what we do today. But I'm finding that maybe there's an opportunity to get involved earlier in the process in the future
Mm,
and help authors write actionable books. Like I'd
right.
love to help somebody take
Right.
a book
Hmm.
concept and rewrite it so that it's better engineered so that the reader can take better action. Because
Right.
sometimes we read these books and they just seem so philosophical or inspirational, motivational, but they don't help us take action. And so
That's right.
that's the missing link, in my opinion. And like, yeah, I'd love to rework some of my favorite books and just make the action so much more obvious within the pages.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea too. I mean, talk about you're like really encompassing everything, in your business, right? Like taking them from that point, then you're going to become a publisher. You got to just like slow down, Nicholas. Right? It's a lot of work, but it's pretty awesome. So, are you helping with just the personal development space, really, like the nonfiction? I know you said nonfiction. Is that autobiographies as well, things like that, or where do you play around in that space?
Yeah, I love to say if a book can be read and the reader can use that book to make progress in their life, then we'll promote it. And so, yeah,
Okay.
we do cover some biographies and memoirs, mostly in the entrepreneurship space or business or self-help space. We cover some philosophy and psychology books. Most of
Okay.
the books that we're covering, though, they're traditional self-help or business books because those are very applicable, they're actionable. People can
Mm.
read them and use what they learn to improve their
Mhm.
lives. Sometimes I say it like this: a great book condenses decades of somebody else's lived experience into days. So
Days. Yep.
you can consume 30, 40, 50 years of valuable information and life lessons in just a couple.
Hey there, my amazing community of straight talkers. I just wanted to give a quick announcement because I wanted to introduce you to a transformative life coaching program that I have made exclusively for women. I want them to break free from shame and embrace their true potential so that they can build that life and business that they have always wanted. Now, our transformational coaching will guide you, we will help you, we will uncover your passion, your goals, and will develop your roadmap to success. Visit me at neenaperez.com and you can join an amazing community of women that are on the same trajectory as you, because I want you to create that life and business you deserve and transcend that shame and unwanted behaviors. So don't wait any longer. Visit neenaperez.com and let's embark on this journey together. Now back to the show.
Couple of days of reading. That's like the best time hack I've ever heard, right?
Yeah.
And so, I'm 29 years old, but if you include the 500 books behind me, let's say each one is 20, 30 years of experience, like that's 1,000 years of wisdom packed into my
Yeah.
brain,
Yeah.
thousands of years of wisdom, so that's how I like to think about it.
Do you believe in people taking, let's say, a book and actually implementing the steps and that's enough? Or do you believe that it should be coupled with something like mentorship, coaching, mastermind groups, all that kind of stuff? Or how do you view that?
Yeah, I think the more you can do, the better. So one of the strategies I talk about in my group is creating in my book is creating an accountability group,
Yeah.
because life is hard enough going at it alone. Like, why not have your friends and family support you? And why don't you support them at the same time?
Hmm.
So one of the strategies that really worked for me early in my journey was meeting with a few of my friends on a weekly basis and talking about the books we're reading,
Oh,
holding each
cool.
other accountable to taking better action from what we were learning. And then it evolved to like other areas of our life, like health goals, wealth goals, relationship goals, the whole nine yards. And
Hmm.
so, if that Jim Rohn saying is true, that we are the average of the five people that we spend the most time with, why not increase the average instead of just kind
Yes.
of shoot off by yourself? You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. So talk to me then about your book, because your book is Rise of the Leader. Am I right?
Rise of
Rise
the
of the
Reader.
Reader. Rise of the Reader. I just ordered it, so I can't wait to get my hands on it. So go ahead and tell me about this book. Tell me what's going on here.
Yeah, well, as I was building my community, right, we're sitting at about 150,000 followers today, a million impressions a
It's
month.
awesome.
Along that journey, hundreds of people, maybe even 1,000 people have reached out to me and they've said, Nick, I appreciate all of the book recommendations. That's amazing. I bet some of these books can help me solve problems. But each time I
Mm,
read one of these books, I struggle with how to transform information into action. Like, what's
yes.
missing? What do I do? And I'd always respond to people. I mean, that's I'm of service. Like that motivates me genuinely. So I would send a voice note or maybe type out an email, get on a quick Zoom call. But I always felt like I was underserving those people because I had never defined my process. Like I couldn't even
Right.
articulate what I was doing. So what I decided to do was write a book on it. I knew my
That's
audience would want to
cool.
read a book, so I decided to write a book on it. And at first I kind of had to like observe my own behavior from a third party perspective and
Yeah.
watch myself implement these books and then kind of journal and document what was happening. And so the result of the book, Rise of the Reader, is all of my favorite strategies around scheduling reading times, setting an intention for each book, effective reading and note taking strategies, how to retain more from the books you're reading, how to put them into action, build
Yeah.
an accountability group, build an activity tracker, measure your progress, all of it packed into one book so that each and every time you read other books in the future, you can get more out of them.
What did you discover about yourself in that process? Were you did you see blockages? Did you see places where you were like, I don't why do I think like that? Or why am I doing that? Like, did you get self-awareness at all doing that process?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
At many different points in the process. I thought because I'm a very disciplined person that it would be very easy for me to insert an hour of reading a day, stick to that plan, and get the book done in a few months. It took me
right.
about 3 years. And I found
Sounds
the
about
writing
right.
process to be very difficult. I really
Yeah.
did. So, as far as self awareness is concerned, I realized I'm not a great writer. I'm a better reader, that's for
Yeah.
sure. But yeah, and you know what? I gained a lot of respect for the authors that we work with because I
Mhm.
thought it was
Mhm.
easier than it really was to write and promote a
Mhm.
book effectively.
Yeah, it is, right? I think it really is. I wrote my autobiography too, and I tried to focus, but it was a very cathartic experience. I cried a lot through it and the whole process, and I'm like, I thought this was going to be like 2 seconds, I got this. Nah, not true. Not true.
Yeah.
Very difficult, and I think that's why I haven't written my second one yet, because it was really hard. So, I'm glad you got through it though. 3 years, you must feel so accomplished, right? Because 'Cause you're now it's coming out in November, you must be super excited about that, and, now you're, like, in the game with these guys, right? So, it's not just reading the book, now you got a book that can be read, which is cool. So, give me a tip or 2, if you can, for people who are getting into reading. And I think one of the things I struggled with the most, because I do have a little bit of ADHD, was the retention. Right. So it
Mhm.
was a little hard for me to retain. I have to write as I read and highlight and do all of that to get it going. So give me some tips on, what tips would you give somebody who's picking up your book and just needs to know how to start this process?
Yeah, so I think even with the retention piece, it all starts by setting the right intention for each book that you're reading. So
That's
sometimes
good.
I'll meet people, Nina, and I'll be like, "Hey, what book you're reading?" And they'll tell me, and then I'll say, "Why?" And they'll be like, "What do you mean why?" I'm like, "Well, why are you reading the book that you're reading? We
Right.
need to understand what purpose this book is supposed to provide us." And
Right.
so I like to set this intention or this goal before I start reading each book. And I follow the SMART goal framework. So SMART stands
Okay.
for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and and time oriented, right?
Time. Right.
SMART. And so an intention for a book, let's just say on communication, is not just to jump into the book and read and hope that it's going to improve my communication, but I'll set a very specific goal, something like find and implement at least 2 strategies for improving
That's
my
good.
communication by the
Yeah.
end of September.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to write that on the inside cover and I'm going to review that intention each time I read a few more pages so that my brain can actively filter for the actions that I'm looking to take. Not just consume the entire book, but only
Right.
retain what can help me solve the problem or develop the skill set that I really am actually looking for.
That's
And I
good.
think that the reason that I say that relates to retention is because if you can create an emotional reason to read the book, you're far more likely to retain what you read.
That's so good. Oh, I'm taking that.
Yeah, and write it right on the inside cover. And then, I think as far as retention goes too, uh, my favorite line, I learned this from a memory guru, actually. He memorized the first 10,000 digits of pi. He's crazy. His name's Kevin
Is it?
Horsley.
Oh, Horsley. Okay. I thought you were going to
Yeah.
say quick. Yeah.
No, Jim Quick's great too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kevin Horsley. So Kevin always says this. He says, repetition leads to retention.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can set a great intention, you can take notes related to that intention, and then you can repeat them, right? Review them as often as
Yep.
possible. You will retain them. And so rewriting your notes, like you're talking about, that's a
Yep.
form of repetition. And
Right.
then what I like to do, like, let's say I read a book on communication and I say I want to find and implement at least 2 strategies to improve my communication by the end of the month. I finish the book and then, like maybe there's 10 strategies that I've found and I don't know which ones to take action on. I'll rewrite them. So I'll write
Mm,
all 10 on a piece of paper and then I'll look at them and say, what 20% of these can lead to 80% of the change, right? Because not every takeaway is
right.
equal. We
Right.
should only focus on the highest leveraged activities that we know we can take immediate action on. And so maybe 1 or 2 of those things will actually make it into my online notebook where I organize all my notes and my activity tracker where I measure my activity and my implementation. Because again, it's not like I remember reading Think and Grow Rich the first time and I had 100 notes. That's
Right.
overwhelming. As a result, I didn't take any action on the book.
Right. That's
But if I
good.
only look for manageable opportunities to implement it, I think you're far more likely to implement them. And then as a result, also retain more from the books that you're reading.
That is so good. That's such good advice. I think I'm finding that a lot right now with people online, right? We're just going squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. And like we're not implementing anything because we're looking for that next shiny object, right? But I think your book is going to be our next shiny object because I know I'm going to read it because I have to. I want to master that, right? I mean, that's something that I'm into is personal development. And I'm really trying to get even deeper with it. So this is going to be a great strategy, I know for me, and I know for a lot of people who are listening. And a lot of people who listen are entrepreneurs and leaders. So this is going to be amazing for them, right? So you're going to have to give us all of that, right? Where do we get the book? Where do we find you? Because we want to be part of that big ass group you got going on, right?
Yes,
So
yes. Join
yeah,
us.
so give
Join
us
us.
that.
Yeah.
Yes, give
It's
us
a
that.
movement now. So I think the best place to find me is at Book Thinkers on Instagram. And here's one of my favorite things to do. If anybody in your audience wants a custom book recommendation from me, just go to Instagram, go to at Book Thinkers and shoot me a DM. Tell me about a problem that you're facing. Tell me
Mm,
about a skill set that you'd like to develop. I may ask some follow-up questions, but I will get back to you and provide a book recommendation. So that's kind of like
that's
this
really
book
cool.
matchmaker role that I like to play
Yeah,
because I do believe these books can solve so many problems. Like at the end of the day, our problems are not unique. Our human experience is not unique. Billions
that's
of
right.
people have lived before us, millions of them have written books, and thousands of those books probably document a way to overcome the problem you're facing. And
So
I
true.
heard somebody say it like this recently. If you're dealing with something on a daily basis, let's say like a relationship issue, a business issue, something with your health, something that you don't think you can overcome. If you deal with that on a daily basis over the next 30 years, you'll deal with it 11,000 times. That's the
Wow.
math. 365 times 30. And so spend the time to find the
Wow.
book that can help you overcome that problem. Spend $20, a few hours of your time, read and implement the book and get rid of the problem. Like that's what these books can do for us. Because again, there are probably thousands of books out there to solve almost any problem imaginable. I mean, it's
Yeah.
wild how much info's out there.
So true. Now, but what if somebody wants to work with you? I have authors that listen to the show, right? So what if somebody wants to work with you? Where do they reach you to do that?
Yeah, on our website, bookthinkers.com, I think I
Okay.
sent you some links you could toss in the
Yep.
show notes.
I am.
There's a
Mhm.
link on our website to book a discovery call to learn a little bit more about our services. And yeah, I mean, we'd be happy to work with anybody that wants to come our way as long as we're a good fit.
Good. Thank you so much, Nick. I know you have a hard stop, so I want to thank you very much for being on here for real. This was a great conversation. I love what you're doing, and I love the way you're exposing authors to us as well. I follow you, so I know what's I know what's coming out because I always, oh, that's okay, that's what's happening. Okay, good. And I know that right now you have like a contest. I don't know if it's over or not, but I just realized you have it. And by the time the show airs, it'll probably be over. But I want people to follow you, and I want them to make sure that they reach out to you. That's pretty cool that you give them book recommendations because that's huge in people's lives when they're feeling stuck. So thank you for that, and thank you for being on Straight Talk. You're way cool. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
well, thank you. You're way cool as well. I appreciate you hosting an awesome show, and so much gratitude goes your way for choosing to have
Thank
a
you.
conversation with me. Thank you.
Ah, it was so cool. Guys, I told you that you would love this guy, right? Best humans on the planet. That's what I do. So make sure that you go ahead and like, follow, share, subscribe, all that great stuff. I'm going to make sure to make all his show notes on the bottom here so that you can go ahead and click on those links. Work with the dude because he's so cool, right? Don't we love cool dudes? Thank you guys for being here. This is Neena Perez, Straight Talk, no sugar added. Until next time.